Alrighty, there we go. All right, so this week we have pain support. So a few of you may have heard a little bit of my story and a little bit of how I first got into oils, but I'll go over it a little bit in this, and a little bit of how like my protocol that I used and continue to use, although it's changed a little bit. I just had the top 10 and Copaiba to start with. That was solely what I used for probably the first 6 to 8 months at least, I think, whereas now I use quite a bit outside of the top 10. But yeah, so I was on a lot of different pain medication because I'd had a mountain bike accident where I came off and I damaged my shoulder and my back, my ribs. I vibrated my vertebrae, so pretty close to a broken neck. And it was 2 years after my accident that I started using the oils, and I was still on a crazy long list of medications. I was on tramadol, codeine, nerve blockers, sleep medication just to give me a little bit of sleep. And I was on a couple of other things anyway. There was a big long list, and it still wasn't helping. I remember some days that I was just sitting there, because I was still off work. That I was just sitting there in so much pain that like my eyes were actually watering, because even on all of that, it wasn't really touching it. So I started to get quite desperate and started to look at some other things that could be helping. The surgeons and everybody couldn't really do much more for me. They had offered me shoulder surgery, but it was mainly my back that was the biggest issue. And so, I'll go down there. There we go. So yeah, I went along to an oils class. I'm just trying to remember what my next slides are. I'm not going to quick. I went along to an oils class, and they put it was just Copaiba diluted onto one side of my back, and then they put past tense on the other side. And I had walked into the class very hunched over. I couldn't stand up straight. My right leg would kind of come quite swingy, and yeah, they put Copaiba in that on my back, and I was able to walk. I didn't run out of the class, but I was able to walk out of the class a little bit easier. And so I was like, oh, maybe this really can work. So that was where I bought my own kit. And yeah, slowly it kind of improved. So I mean, we'll all know the 3 different ways to use the oils: topically, through the diffuser, and as a food additive in your water. And so I started using these 3 ways, and still to this day, I find that if I slip up in one of these things, I'll start getting quite stiff. So topically is probably the way that I most use it. It's in all my sports bags. And yeah, but if I start slipping up with putting it through the diffuser, I find that I just get more and more stiff. My diffuser broke at one point, and it probably been about 2-3 months. And I remember saying to Mum, I was like, I haven't done anything different in my sports or anything like that. But I was just struggling like with my back again, being really stiff. And I borrowed Mum's diffuser for a little while, and then it was like quite fine again. I heard her. Yeah. Sorry, sound like somebody wanted to get in. And so, yeah, so then I started using the diffuser again, and it started helping. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Just the 3 ways that you're still like that. I'm still to this day. My accident now was about 6.5 years ago. And yeah, I'm still needing to use them all 3 ways. So I go into to the next one. So this is just a little bit about Copaiba itself. And yeah, just the different ways that it can be used. So my biggest thing that I use it for is pain support, but there is it's really good for your skin, and your immune system, and boosting your mood. Like there's extra things in there as well. So this one here is the pain blend that I did use eucalyptus in there at the beginning, but eucalyptus and balance are obviously the 2 new ones to the top 10. And so they're the 2 that I've added into this pain one. I would have used ice blue in the other one. and the other 4 oils. So yeah, that's just the one that I used back then, and that's what really it did support me. So I've used different, like my pain blend now is a little bit different, but I do find that this one works really well as well. And so I put that in topically through the diffuser, and then the Copaiba under the tongue. Yeah, so I think in my next slides, I can't see the bottom of it. I've set it up slightly wrong. But the other day at squash, because now that I'm able to play sports, thankfully, because of the oils, I'm back playing, which can cause a few injuries in themselves. And I managed to run into the wall. I think I tripped on my foot or something. I'm not 100% sure. But I tripped and hit my head anyway. And I was out cold for about 4 or 5 minutes, the girls think, and ended up with this massive egg on my forehead. And I've got the photos here for you, some nice selfies. But yeah, so that was about an hour afterwards. I was on the ground, and the girls said, "Oh, we're trying to find some painkillers." And then one of the others said, "Oh, she'll probably want her oils." So they bring down my whole squash bag, and I've got this whole big zip in there, and they I like open that up, and it looks like a whole I don't know what you call it but it looked like a whole pharmacy, but all with doTERRA products. And so I got out my ice blue tablets, and I had one of them and put stuff on my head. And before, I think it was about 15-20 minutes after I'd first done it, that I ended up with the oils, because I couldn't talk when I first woke up for a little bit. Scared the girls all a bit. But it was, when I woke up, it was like throbbing, like the pain of it was so intense. But then once I put the oils on, it actually wasn't painful at all, and it hasn't been since. So yeah, and then there was the next morning. A little bit of a different angle, but the angle that I had it on, you couldn't see a little bump at all, and that's barely even there. So I tried to get it on the camera, but it had pretty much gone down. So then there was a bit of bruising, but for me, I don't bruise at all. So yeah, the fact that there was a bit of bruising was quite substantial for me. So this here was the protocol that I used. So that's my topical pain blend. So that's the one that I use now. And that's on all of my, that's in all my bags. That particular pain blend, I just find it's a little bit slightly more powerful than the other one, but it's kind of something to gear towards rather than, kind of as an end goal for me, at least, because I do all my sport. And so I did that pain blend every 5 minutes for the rest of the evening, and every 20 minutes the next day, probably the next 2 or 3 days even. And the Correct-X and the Ice Blue stick, they were all something that I just did really regularly. I was quite scared of getting concussion or delayed concussion, and I was monitoring symptoms and doing all that. And there was a nurse there when I first did it, so she did all her checks. And so I also did the ice blue tablets, and I take them most days anyway. But that day was even more particular, and the next day I had them about every 6 hours. And the Copaiba soft gels, which I read somewhere recently that the Copaiba soft gels really help within themselves to reduce inflammation and help support you in that way. But taking them with another supplement, they are really good at just enhancing whatever you're taking. So I may try to piggyback those two together. And that was I was also taking the Copaiba and frankincense. They were both really important, I felt, for the concussion side of things, helping with that. And the MetaPower, I feel like I tried to find a little bit more information about that, but it's relatively new, so I struggle with that a little bit. But it does support your tissues. So that's another product that I take every day. But I found that it was extra helpful in those coming days. And And also with the MetaPower, I was also having a bit of problem with my squash arm with tennis elbow. And yeah, I just found that after about 3 or 4 weeks of being on the MetaPower, I haven't done anything else differently, but my pain in my elbow has gone. And I can't say it was definitely that, but I just found that quite interesting. Just with that tissue support that it gives. And this here was what I did in the diffuser, which is a little bit different. Like if you were watch our recording from the sleep, stress and emotion support last week, or if you were joined with us live, it's quite different to our sleep ones and what I would normally use for myself. Even in the regular, I use these oils, but I would just be adding lavender or eucalyptus, some extras. But because I just had that head knock, I thought, well, this is probably these oils. I really want to target this. So I kind of just changed up because that's at the time. So yeah, just from last week we had that. Oops, what have I done? Made it all disappear. There we go. So yeah, they use oils, share oils, and teach others. So just again coming back to that, like using them for yourself and then sharing them with others, and then just teaching others. Like it scary, but it's all just, yeah, it comes with it. And you're with other people. Down at squash this weekend, somebody came over to me and they said, oh, like he oils, and I was like, yeah, like, are you wanting some? And so he put it on his knee before he played, and then I gave him a sample to take home, and I've got it all set up in my bag so that all my samples are just ready to go, just so that it's easy, because squash gets quite busy, or life gets busy, or wherever you are, and so just having them ready to go is I find really helpful. But yeah, I've just found these oils like incredible. Like I was saying to somebody on the weekend, really, like I shouldn't be playing, and like I was told that I wouldn't be, like with the injuries that I'd had after my mountain bike accident. I was told by surgeons I wouldn't run, I wouldn't play squash. But people who see me at squash and then hear about my accident, they're all like, oh, really? Because I'm like running around the court, and I'm one of those silly people that dives, or then I get up and I'm fine. And it's kind of like, I shouldn't be able to do this, but because of the oils, I am, which is amazing, because sport was always my life. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for them to be able to get me to play again, because yeah, 2 years on from an accident and still in that kind of state, and they weren't going to be changing anything. So yeah, it's a little bit of my story and kind of how I got to end up using the oils. So yeah, I don't think I just did that as an extra products outside of the top 10, and I put them in a going back in time, what the order that I would be purchasing these in, just for me. And this is where everybody will be different. Like if Mum was to write this list, she would have, I think she would put fibre as his top as well, but all of the rest, like her list might be a little bit different. Whereas I do a lot of sport, and I had a lot of, or still have a bit of pain, but as long as I keep on top of it, it's fine. But yeah, I had a lot of pain, and so this is what I would have done it, the order in, for me, and that's just where everybody is different in that. And I think, yeah, that's all the slides I have. So yeah, I'll flick the recording off, and then we can go through any questions or anything that people might have. Let me just